Hi, to you with, excuse me, Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this live stream as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the issue, and you see this around a fair bit, this quiet quitting. And there's quite a few TikTok videos, particularly TikTok, but I've seen it on other platforms as well, where workers, typically younger ones, or supposedly marginalized groups, women and black, brown people, that sort of thing. They talk about quiet quitting, and this more seems to be a girl thing. I suppose nearly all the videos I've seen actually have been either younger women or gay guys, or some trans people as well. So this quiet quitting, what quiet quitting is, it's assuming I've understood it correctly, it's a case where you do the minimum amount of work, and you only do what you have to do to keep your job day to day, and unless the boss or your supervisor has flagged it as a priority, you don't bother with it. Why would you do something else? Why would you even do your job? And you can pretty much get away with this. The boss can come around and say, well, why haven't you done this? Well, you didn't tell me to do it. Oh, I didn't know. Oh, I forgot. Oh, well, I was doing this. You told me to do that. So now this is, I've come across workers like this. So it wasn't called quiet quitting. I've come across workers like this, and I would never put up with it. No, you have to do your job, and you have to do productive work. And if you don't, it lets down your colleagues, it lets down the company, it lets down the shareholders. It's someone else will have to do that work if you don't do it, or the work won't get done, and we lose customers, for example, and this sort of thing. So I was very much onto that as a boss, and wouldn't put up with any of this quiet quitting nonsense for even a moment. Now, I did notice that there were certain people who, like, for example, I think every Indian from the subcontinent, other than a couple of Sikhs, I guess, but every Indian from the subcontinent that I came across, at least, was an expert quiet quitter. They did the absolute minimum amount, and so did a few others as well. And I found that the idea of industrious and conscientious commitment to doing your work, and coming to your boss and saying, look, I finished that, this is something else you wanted me to do, these sorts of things. That was pretty rare. I mean, it's rare among white people, let alone anyone else. But when I look at those who had a commitment and a skin in the game attitude, it was nearly always white people. Not totally, but nearly always white people. So and white men, by the way. So I just want to sort of, that's the quiet quitting type thing going around. And there were unions used to have a quiet quitting sort of thing, which was back in the day. I remember it's called work to rule. So you just exactly did what was in your job description and nothing else. So unless your job description was comprehensive enough where it said you have to push the third button on the right-hand panel, unless it specifically said that, then the worker wouldn't do it. So, well, no, that's not in my job description. Therefore, I'm not doing it because I'm working to rule. So you weren't refusing to do your job. You're just working. So you would say, well, because that didn't exactly say that in my job description to push the third button on the left panel at 3 o'clock, because it didn't say that, then I'm not required to do it. I will work and I will do what's in my job description, but I'm not going to do that, because if you want me to do that, it's outside of my job description and I ain't doing it. So that work to rule thing, and that was a form of quiet quitting back in the day, and this would be used to try and get pay rises and extract other benefits from the employer. Whether that employer was government or private, it didn't matter, and the unions were quite active in those sort of schemes, and it started to give rise to the mega and super detailed job description. And even now, I've noticed when say some sort of minority group or protected group gets fired, they can take things to court that a white person would never have a chance of taking to court, or a white man would never have a chance. And they're activist lawyers that are paid for by human rights commissions and NGOs and so on, say, well, Billy Bob got fired for not doing such and such, but that's not clearly stated in his job description, therefore, and that type of thing. And they often get away with that. I'm surprised how often they get away with that scam. But anyway, that's so. But I want to look now at this work to rule thing, but in the light of affirmative action programs and non-meritorious hiring, race, gender quotas, black, lesbian quotas, and so on. So now, we again, as I've mentioned a million times, I've got a share in a business, and so I from time to time go and I'm on the front line going to meetings, and I'm probably one of the better qualified to do the commercial details of some of these meetings. So I end up doing it on a number of occasions, not all the time though. I'm not necessarily available all the time, nor do I want to be working full time necessarily. I'll fill up the gaps if someone's away or sick, or if I just happen to be the better qualified, but otherwise I don't involve myself day to day. Nonetheless, so what I found is, and this is getting worse almost by every day goes by, this is getting worse. When we're dealing with, or when I'm dealing with sort of executive level, C-level sort of management, even if they're white guys now, increasingly, and particularly in the newer type technologies of, cloud software or alternative energy type programs, anything where there's a lot of government handouts. what we're tending to see now is that socialites are being hired, wealthy, the offspring or the wealthy socialites that are being gifted prestigious jobs. They may have inherited millions, and sure, they're chairman of the art gallery or those sorts of things, but they want to feel like they're really they're really in the thick of it, these people, because they don't know what even that means. They've never had a job, they've never worked, they've inherited millions. Sure, they flip real estate here and there and pretend like they're big time, but they've never actually worked, and so they imagine work as being the equivalent of a medieval general in front of an army. You're on this shining white armor on a snorting white steed, and you're at you're there sort of forward men, that type of thing, and they see it in this terms of glory and prestige, and hey, I'm someone of consequence. I'm the managing director of this, or the chairman of the board that, or the president of so and so, and they've got no concept of this work, and they again have no concept at all of what work is, or accountability, or productive performance. So increasingly, I'm finding these are the people at the C level, and then some of them are very pleasant and very polite and all this sort of stuff, and they're nice to talk to, and so you sit down and realize that they've actually got no idea, and not even square one type of idea, and they're the people in charge. They're the ones that either they've got they're well connected into government, or particularly they're well connected into the big financial houses, and they're gifted these jobs as if they're handing out baubles or handing out chocolates or something like that. They're just gifted these jobs. And it's viewed that, well, hey, that doesn't matter if we gift these jobs to these idiots who we like. They'll be loyal to us, and they'll do what we tell them to do. So the big venture capital firms that are like subsidiaries of BlackRock and all the like, they'll do what they're told. They get on well with the people in the government. Who cares if they don't know anything? We'll just give them a checklist so they can tick off the boxes there. So who cares? It doesn't matter that they don't know and or that they don't give a shit. So these are the people at the top. Now they then delegate. So we go through the preliminaries, and they decide that we're people of good upstanding character, or whatever it is they're trying to sort of they want to just sort of suss you out, check you out. Check him out, and so we go through that, and that's fine, but they don't ask sort of the commercial questions. They're not asking the sort of questions. They're not going through a process where they're trying to determine, can you deliver the services that you claim you can? Can you deliver the quality of services? Can you deliver value for money services at a price we want to pay? And these sorts of things. They're not going down that path. It's all very, very just again, just socially sussing you out, because that's really all they understand. They can't ask the commercial questions. They can only determine, gee, is this guy, would we consider him social? Would we invite him to our next dinner party? That type of assessment that has nothing to do with business and takes up my time, because they're paid to sit there. But it's all the time, my time and my colleagues, we're not paid to sit there. So we don't really like this idea of being put through the ringer for what isn't a big contract anyway. But put through the social sort of, are you a socially upstanding person type ringer when there's not a lot of money, and because we're all there, we're wasting money while we're sitting around talking about things that have nothing to do with the business at hand. So they're not qualified. Now they've already engaged in quiet quitting. These people, not only do they do the minimum amount, they swan around doing prestigious shit, or what they think is prestigious, but they don't do any work. They don't make any decisions that have any business decisions that have any import. They're just there to take and pretend and play house and play in the sand pit. That's really all they're there for. And so they then delegate. So, well, you go and talk now to Billy Bob. He's in charge. He's the the whatever manager, the junior VP of such and such. So we'll and then we talk. And Billy Bob wants to convene a meeting, and Billy Bob, because no one actually has a job there. They're all just passengers and parasites. They've all just been non-meritoriously allocated their jobs. So they've all quiet quit, as much because there's too many of them there, and they've actually got no work to do. So if they were industrious and conscientious, which they're not to begin with, but if they were, there wouldn't be enough work for them to do. So they're being put into a situation where 50 jobs have been created for when maybe 15 or 10 people could actually do that work if they got off their asses and got into it. So but there's 50 people there. So by the time they divide what work there is amongst themselves, they decide that maybe there's only 1 day a week, 2 days a week max where they actually have to do any work. So they then invent work, which is this other form of quiet quitting, where they have these meetings all day where they pretend they're doing important things, and they sit there for hours going around in circles pretending that they're doing something, but in fact they're not. And they become, and again, the Indian subcontinent people are expert at these sort of bureaucratic go around in circles thing. They're to be commended for it. And the minorities generally, women love meetings. These bureaucratic women are everywhere. They love these meetings where nobody does anything, no one's responsible, no one's accountable, and everyone just talks in little politically correct platitudes, and they just go around in little girly circles, this sort of thing. And so anyway, we sort of, when we're meeting the junior VP of such and such, he or she then decides that this is a great opportunity for everyone, even people who've got nothing to do with what we're talking about, invite them to the meeting. As people have nothing to do, they may say, oh, I want to come to the meeting too. So you can come into the meeting thinking you're going to meet one or two of the people that you're directly sort of dealing with, or that are relevant, maybe a few that are relevant to it, and find that there's 35 people in the fucking room, and they're all pretending to have something to do with, or pretending to, and the questions you'll get are the sort of quiet quitting questions of, particularly the younger girls have been radicalized through the education system. And okay, well, this is what we do, and we'll go through it. And we're talking about the technical and commercial aspects of the thing. And we'll say, okay, does anyone have any questions? Can we go over anything again? Is there anything you'd like us to focus on or revisit? And then little Susie down the back will say, oh, okay, can you tell me how many black lesbians you have on staff? You get those sort of questions. If you, well, what's that got to do with what we're talking about? So those are the questions but those are the questions you get from people who have quiet quit. They just have these ideological things. Half of them fall asleep in the middle of it. I don't even know why they're there. No one's got a sensible question, but more importantly, no one understands what we're talking about. And we have to really slow things down, really go step by step. And even then we're getting blank stares in return. So I would argue that quiet quitting is not just people who are thinking, well, why am I bothering? Why do I give a fuck or anything like that? Quiet quitting is when you get masses of non-meritorious appointments. People have been appointed purely on the basis of race, gender, and minority quotas, who not only are incapable of doing the job, but there are way too many of them put in there, and their method of survival is to just talk in politically correct progressive platitudes amongst each other. No one knows what to do. No, if you do some work, you might be held accountable, be responsible for it, and they can't have that. So the whole thing is a children's sandpit playing house, young girls dollhouse charade. That's all these things, and increasingly that's now the norm. It's not unusual. There was a time when that would be very unusual, but not anymore. And so we're having a conversation where the executive vice president we were talking to in fact he called me up, so he was saying, well, how did it go, and this and that and the next thing. And so I pointed out to him that and had to do it very, very sort of diplomatically and cautiously, that the people that he was delegating the project to sort of do the day-to-day management of it, if you will, they actually have no idea, none, not even, word one type idea now. So we've got the situation here where we can spend the time educating them and showing them what it is. But that's going to take, the project will be twice as long if we have to do that. If we have to work through them as people that know nothing and don't care, then it's going to be a slow, a painful process. So, but again, I'm talking to a guy who's a socialite who's never had a job in his life. So, well, we're ticking the boxes for race and gender quotas. We're doing what we have to do. What are you saying? Why do you think it's a problem that they don't know what they're doing? What's that got to do with anything? And really, then you have to talk to him on why this is a problem, why it's relevant. And you're trying to explain to someone who's never actually had a job, who's never been accountable. And it's a straight white guy, by the way, from a well-to-do sort of background. But he, we've got to sort of move quite cautiously here. So in my opinion, he's quiet quit already. So we're seeing the architecture of quiet quitting is expanding at a rate of knots. All these peasants they bring in from the third world to work in takeout food stores, and they live 20 to a one-bedroom apartment and live on, are kept as effectively kept as slaves in a form of modern slavery. They're quiet quitters. What are they going to do? They're going to do just what they have to do to get by, and because they're such cheap labour and they're treated like shit, they're able to not work. They may have to put hours in, but they don't have to actually work hard or be directly accountable for productive output. Now, on top of that, I think quiet quitting generally, I don't blame a lot of people for quiet quitting. Or I don't blame. I understand it. That's a better way of putting it. Because the amount of jobs that exist now, given the cost of living, the amount of jobs that exist in a place like Sydney that will allow you to get ahead or live any sort of quality of life. By quality of life, I'm talking about some sort of independence, that if you feel like going out and having a cup of coffee or, I don't know, a beer or a cocktail, that you can afford to do it. You can run your own motor vehicle. When the new fashions come out in the season, you decide you want to buy a new, I don't know, shirt or shoes or trousers. You can afford to do it. That sort of thing. That's 5% of the jobs or less now pay enough money to live that quality of life and to be able to say, I've got some sort of a future. Now that's from 75 out of 100 jobs 50 years ago to 5 out of 100. That means 95 workers out of every 100 have no future. They have, other than what they may inherit or if they win the lottery or something, they have no future from their own income or their ability to. Now, it doesn't matter how hard they work. It's only going to be 5% and is shrinking. Only 5% of the workers are going to make that sort of money. So if you make it, you're just taking someone else out of that 5%. So you're not growing the base now, given that the new wealth creation in the West is the ratio of new wealth to existing wealth is declining, and it's being artificially propped up by excessive real estate prices and by excessive levels of debt. That's where the wealth is now, and it's a very artificial house of cards type wealth. So really, there's very few people who have any future at all in the West, and certainly in the big cities. Absent of inheritance, there's a tiny number, and I think it'll go from 5% easily less than 1% in the coming decades. So only 1 out of 100 people will have any conceivable future. In fact, less than 1 in 100 will have any conceivable future and any sort of independent life. So we're looking at 99 workers out of 100 are going to have no future whatsoever, no skin in the game. They can't afford to get married. They can't afford to buy a fucking house. They can do nothing to create a future for themselves. And that means they'll all be quiet quitting. Now, this is something that that I noticed in third world countries when I was and still do some, but when I was traveling around these third world countries, I noticed how apathetic they all were. These people that had no future, no possibility of a future, corrupt, dirt poor, tin pot bullshit societies, and because hardly anyone had any future in the already rich, their future was assured, so they didn't have to work. The rest of the populace in these dirt poor third world countries, they had no future, and so why the fuck should they work? They'll do the absolute minimum. That's it. And if their boss doesn't notice them and they can survive for days without doing it, actually they'll do it. Why should they bust their ass, given there's nothing in it for them? And I think we're in that situation now. So I understand quiet quitting, and I think it's an expression of just how bankrupt our new wealth creation capacity in the West has become. You're with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.